Hey everybody, it's Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I get to chit chat with other authors. If you're hearing something different in my voice, I don't sound quite totally normal. It's because I have fucking COVID. After 2.5 years, got the shots, got the boosters. It's just inevitable. So, not quite sure where I got it. I think I was traveling last week, so I could have been it, but I had an event at the Book Bar in Denver, and could have been there. I don't know. But we were up in the mountains this weekend, and Jess and I, and Saturday morning, I wasn't feeling 100%. I'm like, I'll just take a COVID test because, I happen to have them with me in my backpack. And sure enough, right there, double lines. God damn it. But I feel fine. I mean, you can hear my voice, but it's like a cold. I have a runny nose and I have a little bit of a cough. And that has been the extent of it so far. 3 days in. On the show today, I talked to Russell James, horror writer Russell James, and Russell's a cool dude. Sick twisted, like many of us. He's a very cool dude. I enjoyed talking to him. He's written like 20 books, and he's never gotten an agent, and he just knows the system. He knows a press that's really works well for him, and he just generates, man. I mean, like I said, 20 books. And, and he also goes to a lot of conventions, a lot of cons, a lot of horror cons kind of a thing. And he kind of sets up shop there and he sells a lot of books. So he's kind of, got the business figured out, from a do-it-yourselfer kind of perspective, and he's been very successful. So he was interesting to talk to and hear all these different ways that he's approached the business, has approached his writing, and why he writes horror. His bio says his wife reads what he writes, rolls her eyes, and says, "There's something seriously wrong with you." No, there's not. He just likes to write dark stuff. There's nothing wrong with that at all. His most recent release is Quest for the Queen's Temple, Rick and Rose Sinclair Adventure #1, which just came out in June of this year. So definitely check this out. Lots of stuff to learn from him. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm going to go have some water and cough some more. This is me talking to Russell James. You're in Florida, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Are you from there?
No. I was raised in New York on Long Island.
Whereabouts on Long Island? My partner, she's from East Northport.
Oh, okay. She's a little further in than me. I was in Stony Brook.
Okay. So close to Manhattan, and so growing up in Long Island, what were you doing as a kid?
Well, for fun, my father was into sailing, and he would take the whole family sailing, and that was a lot of fun. Long Island sounds great for sailing adventures.
Do you still sail? I find sailing horrifying. Personally, I'm scared. I'm scared of the open water, but you grew up with that. Yes,
I have a 16-foot sailboat, so it's not massive, but I can take it down to Florida to the beach and go sailing.
Oh, that's great. And then what were what kind of line of work were your parents in when you were growing up?
My father worked for Avis Rent-A-Car, and my mother worked at the local school system in the media center.
Oh, okay. And then and you had siblings, or?
Yes, I've got one younger brother who currently lives in Japan.
Oh, what is he doing there?
He works for a Disney affiliated company that teaches English to kids. And
that's cool.
He's got his family is there, and it's fun to visit him and get that whole cultural immersion experience in a completely different country.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I've traveled a lot, and I've traveled a decent amount throughout Asia, but I've only ever been to the Tokyo airport. But Japan to me just feels like, it's like the Bill Murray movie. It's just it's so different. Like it would just
Yes.
be hard to even get your bearings straight. Like I feel like China, Indonesia, Hong Kong for sure, pretty manageable, but that just seems very different to me.
Yeah, if you go to Europe, most things are in English in most places, and if not, you can, you know,
You
at
can
least
figure it
figure
out.
something out. Yeah, you want to go to a certain train station, and you can read that train station, and you'll get there. Forget it in Japan. You
Right.
need someone with you to help you through, which is why visiting and having his family there is such a plus.
Yeah. Yeah. You almost kind of need that in a way. So as you're growing up in Long Island, were you, I'm always curious to know like kind of what that spark was, if there was a spark for somebody who eventually ended up writing, especially fiction. A lot of people have, different kind of pathways, but I'm wondering if growing up, can you kind of look back and be like, oh yeah, I can kind of see where I started to think about, becoming a storyteller.
I know that it interested me. I remember I got something published in junior high in our junior high school journal, whatever it was that they put out in
Right.
in junior high school. Um, but it never occurred to me that it was something that I could pursue as a career for some
Right.
reason. It
Right.
just seemed unrealistic.
It still seems pretty unrealistic.
Still does.
So you had a sound business mind at that age. So that was as opposed to everyone's like, I'm just going to become a writer and be rich and famous, and it's going to be
Right.
fantastic.
I'm going to live in the village, and it's going to be wonderful. Right. Yeah.
Were you reading much as a kid outside of what you needed to
Oh,
for school?
definitely. My parents taught me to read before I went to kindergarten.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which because I would just ask. I kept looking at everything, and I wanted to do it.
So it
Um,
wasn't even necessarily important to them. It was important to you that you've.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
they were definitely readers, but for some reason, I wanted to do it, and that elicited a phone call from my kindergarten teacher, who was very upset and called my mother and said, "Your son is pretending that he can read the names on all the Valentines and hand them out to the kids." My mother said, "No, he really can read the names on the Valentines."
Wow.
So,
Wow. I thought you were going to say that they were upset because, we want to make sure he gets taught to read, our way. But I guess as long as you're reading, and that's,
yeah.
so you're a precocious kid reading young. And then do you remember like, as you kind of got a little bit older, in middle school, high school, were you gravitating? Because you write pretty dark stuff, obviously. Were you gravitating towards that, in your formative years?
The first novel that I read that wasn't some assigned reading for school that just captivated me was from Stephen King,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure it was The Stand, and
Oh,
that was
okay. Yeah.
the first time I sat with a book and read and looked up, and hours were gone, and I
Yeah.
didn't know.
I mean,
And
that's really his magnum opus. I mean, I totally, I mean, I was probably in my 20s when I read it, but that's one of the very, very few books in my life that I've gone back and reread. I went back and reread the unabridged version, and it
mhm,
was just as compelling.
I did the
Um,
same thing. Yep.
but I mean, like well, and also there's so many scenes in New York, in that book, and as the whole Lincoln Tunnel, you know, scene is so horrifying,
Yes.
and once you get, if you almost like you feel like if I can make it past this scene, it's like this guy making it past this tunnel. But yeah, I can see how you were, but that's 1,200 page book. So
Yeah.
that's a
It's
big book
huge.
to be reading as a teenager for sure. Who's your
That's a big
cat? What's your cat's name?
Timothy.
It's so formal.
Photobomb my interview. Great.
That's funny. So you were kind of compelled by those kinds of books, and then as you're working your way. So another thing, one thing we have in common as we get to your college years is we both are graduates of Cornell.
Really?
Yep,
Wow.
it's my this year is my 30-year reunion. I'm not going, but it's my 30 year.
Wow.
So I went to hotel school there. Um,
Oh,
I come from a long line of Cornellians, but very few hoteliers. My dad was an engineer, but my grandparents went there. My grandfather actually was the director of Willard Straight Hall, the student union, for 50 years. That was his job.
wow.
So I've been going to Ithaca. My sister lives there now, and she and her husband run a cancer research lab for Cornell. So anyway,
It's a
uh,
beautiful area. I mean, the
yeah, it
campus
is.
is beautiful. The whole area is just
What
wonderful.
was your, as you're applying for colleges, was that where you wanted to go, or was there something you specifically wanted to study?
Well, I had an Army ROTC scholarship,
Hmm.
so I looked at all the Army ROTC areas, schools that were there, looking for ones that were going to deliver first-rate education.
Right.
And Cornell was right at the top of the list. And I had visited there and I'd seen the school, and I talked with other folks about their ROTC program, and they said it was good. So I've got a good school and I've got a good ROTC program. Then that sounds like that's a good spot to go. So I was
Yeah,
very
my dad
happy.
was ROTC at Cornell.
Okay.
So were you in the arts college?
No, I was in the ag school with a business major.
Okay, got it. And so you were not you were not thinking about writing during school. It sounds
No,
like.
I was thinking about graduating and flying helicopters. That was
Yeah.
my goal. School was just an intermediate step to being a Black Hawk pilot.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean it's funny. Like I tell people like I don't think I read. I mean, I maybe I did, but I don't remember reading any fiction in my 4 years of college because I didn't have to. I didn't have to take any English classes or any lit classes unless I wanted to do it as an elective, and I didn't want to. So I mean, almost zero. Re,
Yeah, I took one,
yeah,
and that was it. And but your reading time is jammed full
right.
already. It's not like you have all this free time.
That's exactly right. Right. I,
Yeah.
I would have had to have been kind of forced to read it. So I would have had to take a class that had required reading, but I just
Yep.
didn't want to. So you graduate and then you've got service ahead of you.
Correct.
So you go, so where are you stationed?
I spent 5 years with the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay. And you started to learn you learned how to fly Blackhawks.
Yep. I was a Black Hawk pilot with them during that
Wow.
time.
What years were that?
80, 84, I went on active duty, trained for a year, and then from 85 to 89, I was with the 101st Airborne.
When was um when was all that mess in Mogadishu? That was like early 91 maybe or something like that.
Yeah, that was right after I got out. And the Mike Durant, the pilot that
Yeah.
was captured, I was flew with me in the 101st Aviation Battalion before he transferred to the Special Forces, and
Wow.
then ended up down there. So to be watching the news and have that forced video that they made all the people take,
Right.
and I'm looking at it go, and I'm, hey, I know that guy.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really scary, but
Yeah.
no,
I
it was a
mean,
very boring peacetime Army experience.
that's that book, Black Hawk Down, scared the hell out of me. Like it was horrifying. And,
Yes.
as was the movie, obviously, as was the real event. But like, I remember reading that book and I just couldn't even imagine how horrifying that must have been. I forget, did Durant die?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he broke his back, if I remember correctly. And then when they finally rescued everybody, I remember seeing him taking him out on a stretcher.
Okay.
Um, so
Okay.
it was,
So you were active until 89 and then what? Then what happens?
and then I went to work for Frito-Lay,
Okay.
and I did that for 30 years.
Oh wow. Okay. What were you
And
doing for Frito Lay? I mean, obviously you progressed through 30 years. You didn't have the same job the whole time, I assume.
I was doing training and technical writing.
Okay.
So everything in the manufacturing part, the part that actually makes the food,
Yeah.
in the packaging area, I was writing training manuals and training material and delivering training for operators and for managers.
Okay.
So uh, that was real. That's what gave me the chance to do the writing. was that my job was 100% travel.
Oh,
So
okay.
I leave Monday, I come back Friday, and 4 nights a week, I'm in a hotel room with nothing to do. So
Right.
there you
Well,
go.
and you're so let's talk about technical writing for a little bit because that's extremely challenging, right? People think it's not, but I mean, so my and when I started writing, I was working with this job. I was in real estate, and we were doing appraisals basically for hotels. So you're writing 150-page appraisal report. A lot of it's boilerplate, but you're doing a lot of describing the market, describing the property, very technical, but it's hard, and it's
Yes.
you it takes a while before you really realize how to convey a message, in a pithy way that delivers all the relevant information and is not flowery,
Mhm.
but it flows. And a lot of people can't do that, and it takes a long time, and it's a muscle that you have to build. And I think that really helped me. And it sounds like maybe not only did you have the free time because you're traveling, but you're building this muscle because you are actually writing a lot, for your job.
Yeah, and technical writing, you have to be very specific because what obviously makes sense to you may not obviously make sense to the trainees.
Right.
And you, like you said, you start to learn ways to deliver things and ways to not deliver things so that you're sure that the people that are getting this training are going to know what you're talking about.
Right.
And it does take some time.
Yeah. And you're conveying the information, but you also have to have, and I think this is true in all forms of writing, and especially journalism, like you have to have the empathy to understand, like, how is another person going to be able to absorb this information, not just here's
Right.
the information, but people absorb it differently. And I think with technical writing, it is a little, and this is how I write with thrillers, is you describe things but get to the point, like, what is happening, what is the tone, rather than just a long a long, just descriptions and things like that. So but is it in your mind at this time that you wanted to write, like, what was that spark of wanting to get into fiction?
When if my wife and I would take a long drive someplace for go do something, I would frequently say, "Hey, you know what would be a good story?" And then I would give her this outline of an idea that I had about these 2 characters, and they would do this, and this would happen, and boom, boom, boom. Well, eventually she got fed up with listening to that. "Why don't you write these down and try to get them published?" And I said, quote, "Because no one would ever pay to read anything that I wrote."
Hmm.
So,
Spoken like a true writer.
I've been trying to live that down for a while. But so that then, for I think it was for Christmas or my birthday, she got me a writing class, and on my writing class, she said, "Here, you talked about doing it. Here's a good start." I
Wow.
did that. I got a writing coach. I did another online class, and that convinced me that it was something I should try. That
Hmm.
I think I could do it, and I might as well give it a shot. So
So did you take that, so when you were thinking of these stories, it sounds like you kind of thought them fairly through. Were you envisioning them as short fiction, as long form fiction?
the the stories I was thinking of would be novella to novel size
Yeah.
things, the ones that I would talk through with her.
Got it. Got it.
But most of the initial writing that I did was actually short stories.
So the initial write was short stories, and then you had however many short stories, and did you start, looking for agents, trying to getting the short stories published, just, querying magazines and things like
Yeah,
that?
I had a couple of short stories published. And then while I was in that second writing class, the instructor said, "Hey, if any of you are out there and you write horror, then there's a new uh, publisher opening up, Sam Hain out of Ohio, and the editor there is Don Doria."
Hmm.
Well, Don Doria is like a horror legend editor from way back, from back in the 80s and 90s. Um, and I had a manuscript ready that I hadn't sent out yet because I was using this class to hone it,
Hmm.
learning things and then go applying it. And I thought, well, I've been rejected by a lot of people I don't know. Maybe I could get rejected by somebody famous. So I sent it to him, and then I got this email back, uh, a month or two later that said, "Hey, yes, this looks great. I would love to publish it. Come talk to
Wow.
me."
Wow.
I immediately assumed was a prank from somebody.
And this is a short story?
No, this was my first novel, Dark Inspiration, in 2011.
Okay.
So all I'd had before that was a few short stories, in a couple of places, and then this novel got picked up, and I
Wow.
got
So without an agent.
without an agent. Yes,
Wow.
because
That's
they took unagented things, which was why the instructor for the class mentioned it to everybody.
right. Right.
So,
Wow. So that's exciting. That must have
oh,
been like
I was on my knees on the floor, heart racing, thinking, "I can't
totally.
believe this is happening." Yeah.
Right. Right. And how does it, what is the thought process at that point before it's even published of like, maybe this is something I can do full time. Maybe I can quit my job at some point. I mean, I never had that thought, and I
No,
still don't. I still have a full time job, but it is pretty exciting, and starts consuming your life and,
yes.
and your mind, and it is hard to kind of compartmentalize and be like, okay, but now I got to go back to my desk.
And you can't help but think maybe this is going to be something big.
Right.
You have to. If you didn't think that, you'd never do it, because every time you had a success, you'd think, well, this isn't worth
Right,
anything.
right. And that's, I think that's actually one of the greatest beauties of writing is that you can have that feeling in perpetuity. Like,
Yes.
I have 8 novels published, and like I'm like maybe the next one is going to be like, and not to say I'm disappointed with any of mine, but like there's the best could always be ahead of you. And I love that about writing.
Right. That's
That's
the same
that's
thing I told that to my wife. I told her the same thing. I said, "You know what? There's like 3 irons in the fire right now, and if just one of those
right.
really hits it, then that's gonna be great."
Right.
So,
And the other side of all of that is it's also, for me, it's also healthy to kind of not think about it at all most of the time and just be like, I write because I love storytelling and I'm writing for
mhm,
myself mostly. And, just keep doing it, keep doing it. And if you just kind of have that mindset and put it out there, I think good things eventually happen. I mean, you have to be tenacious and you have to know the business side of it. But if you're fixated on it, then sometimes that's almost like an impediment to success. I don't know.
yeah,
Some,
I can't imagine the stress of, because it's so hit or miss, and because there's so many elements of luck involved with it, no matter how skilled you are, to be worried about, will I sell enough books to make the mortgage?
right.
Would you'd be brain locked trying to write something because you'd be so worried.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think it depends on, your position within your family unit, how, how reliant, are people on you to earn money.
Right.
And it is stressful to, I like you're 100% right. I couldn't even imagine having that mindset. And you might have one major breakout novel and do quite well, but that's not going to pay for the
Right.
rest of your life.
And
And it would have to
follow up
be
as a
really,
dud.
you'd have to write Gone Girl or something like that for something like that to happen. Um,
Yeah.
but what's good about it, I think, is that, when you have a full-time job, and it depends on what your job is and how flexible it is, but it teaches you how to be disciplined. And we talk
Yes.
about this all the time on the podcast, but it's like fitness, right? Like if you're going to commit to working out, you have to do it every day, and you have to find time and you have to make it a priority. And then if you do, you'll get in good shape. And the
Yeah.
writing is the same thing. Like you don't have to write a lot every day, but I think you have to do it every day. And for me, it's an hour a day, but 7 days a week, and I get shit
Mhm.
done. But you have to because you've got a job. You can't just sit there for 8 hours on your couch and when the muse comes, write a few words down.
And that's what I tell folks, definitely, especially once they get something, they've been working on something for years and it gets published. And I say, okay, your wait for the muse time is over now,
Right.
because now people have expectations that you're going to deliver another piece of work. and it's on their schedule, not yours. So get busy.
Yeah, and if you do write every day, kind of the muse is always there, right? Like it, maybe not in the first 5 minutes when you sit down, and maybe for me it takes a little bit of time to kind of get into that mental space because I don't really think about it that much during the day. And then when I
Mhm.
sit down, I get to be in my world again, and it's fun. But sometimes it takes a little. But then it could be like 15 minutes of like massive output, and you're like, wow. That was amazing, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be much, and you've developed your physical ability to write with your technical writing. Like,
Mhm.
to me, that was the hardest part, is like just constructing sentences, and it's tiring, and it's so easy to hesitate. And then after a few years, you're like, all right, the actual act of writing, I can do this now. If now I just got to know what I have to write about.
Right. I don't think I could, I automatically don't write a passive sentence anymore. I
Right,
just it's been drilled out of my head, to the point where in training material, a passive sentence is really common.
right,
So
right, right.
that's
Yeah, well,
chock
that
full of them. And then you switch gears and no, none of that.
yeah, that's totally true. There are definitely some habits that you have to kind of drill out of you from doing that. And then, and you're right, and this is horror the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a little science fiction, but all the published stuff is horror.
So what happens after that first novel comes out?
I had several novels come out with Sam Hain. I think I had six, maybe
Oh
five or
wow.
six
Okay.
that came out through them. And then they folded.
Hmm.
And that's just one of the things that people who want to be writers need to know, that big or small, there's a good chance that your company may go out of business, they may get bought out, your editor may change, and that person doesn't like you. It there's you never have any laurels to rest on. There's always something going forward.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, my first, I got an agent with my first book, but my first three didn't sell. And then my fourth one sold to a publisher, a very small indie publisher that had just started up like a year earlier and folded 6 months after my book came out. And
Oh,
it almost didn't come out. But I mean, that just, yeah, that shit just happens, like to your
right.
point. But I'm like, my book was out. Let's keep at it. So in the course of 6 books with this publisher, did you feel like you were growing? Did you feel like you were getting bigger? Was it meeting whatever expectations you might have
Oh,
had going into it?
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The last book that I put out with Sam Hain was called Q Island, and it it got star review with Publishers Weekly. It was
Mm,
the pick of the month for Famous Monsters of Filmland
that's
magazine.
awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was featured at South Southwest, and
Wow.
I'm like, this is great. And
Hmm.
then like 30 days later or something like that,
Yeah.
the publisher folds up,
Yeah.
and that was just heartbreaking. I mean, I had the a sequel to it finished, and it was very disheartening to have all that happen.
And you're doing this, all 6 books are still without an agent.
That's yes, I still don't have an agent.
Got it. So then what was your move after
Um,
that publisher?
then I started, the submission agent slash publisher submission cycle that everybody has to go through. You basically, it's like starting from scratch if you haven't got an agent. Going through that, and
Yeah,
while
but you've got a track record and you're
yeah,
not self-published.
yeah, but that did seem to count for a lot.
Huh.
um, but then I found I read some things by a friend of mine that he had published through Sever Press. Now, Severed Press is a niche indie publisher, and their thing is giant monster adventure stories.
Hmm.
And I read a couple of ones that he had done, and I thought, man, that's good. I wish I could write that. And I thought, wait a minute, yeah, you can write that. This is
Hmm.
what do you mean? This is something if you like watching it and you like reading it, you probably ought to try writing it. So I did, and I wrote a novel called Cavern of the Damned, which stars a paleontologist who gets roped into expeditions that end up finding giant monsters. He's not a hero. He is
Hmm.
a little overweight. He's a little clumsy, and he's a lot sarcastic. So he's not happy when this happens.
But fun to
And
write, I imagine.
oh, definitely,
Hmm.
especially after something really dark like Q Island, which is
Hmm.
just I got done writing that and I was depressed. Writing post-apocalyptic stuff is not uplifting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Severed Press picked that up, and and that has turned into a 6 book series. The sixth one comes out this year.
Wow.
All Grant Coleman's Adventures. I also have a 3 book series with them for Ranger Kathy West, who works in our national parks, and she and her partner Nathan find out that some of our national parks were not created for our entertainment. They were secretly created because there's something really dangerous in the middle that doesn't need to get out.
Hmm.
So there's giant monster stories there. And then while all that was going on, Don Doria landed an editor job with Flame Tree Press
Hmm.
in England.
Hmm.
And I sent him a manuscript that I had finished that I was trying to find a home for. And that was The Playing Card Killer, which is a psychological horror, much more serial killer, almost a police procedural more than a
Yeah.
horror. And he loved that and he picked that up.
Wow.
So that started where I'm publishing through Flame Tree and simultaneously through Severed Press.
So, so you have a lot of books out.
Yeah, this one, Demon Dagger, that comes out in August, is the 20th novel I've had published by a publisher.
Wow. So your productivity is very high. So
Yes.
you're easily doing a couple books a year, it sounds like.
Yeah, I could do when I was still working full time, I could do one novel a year and a novella. You
Hmm.
know, Severed Press stuff's novella.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, but now I've retired, so I definitely can focus on that totally, and I can get things done a little bit quicker.
So now you get so now when you meet people and they ask you what you do, you're a writer. There's no
That's
other
correct.
answer to that question.
That's what it says on my tax form every year at the
Uh,
bottom.
that's
Occupation,
awesome.
author.
Yeah. I know. I'm always like, I used to not even say the writer part. And now, like, then I would say it second. And now I
Mhm.
say it first, but I still say the other thing. Because I'm like,
Okay,
because the other thing is really what pays the bills, for the most
right.
part. So,
You feel
yeah,
like
but
a faker if you're, say I'm an author, and yeah,
yeah,
my
totally.
income, and that's a rounding error compared to everything else. So yeah,
Right, right. Like you go to the dentist and they ask you, and they're like, well, then how do you have insurance?
yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, I have another job that does all that. But yeah,
Oh, have I
and
read anything you've written?
oh,
I doubt it.
right, right. And how the hell would I know? I don't know what you read.
Exactly.
but but yeah, that's true. I mean, when you're a horror writer, especially, I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
Stephen Graham Jones,
Yep.
but
He's
he's
great.
here. He lives a few miles from me, and we were just at we were at a party the night before StokerCon. Were you at StokerCon?
No, I was not.
And he got COVID the night before StokerCon started. So he won the StokerCon award,
Uh-huh.
but he wasn't there to accept it. And now we're going against each other for the Colorado Book Award because they don't have a horror category. So they put his My Heart is a Chainsaw in thrillers. I'm like,
Okay.
motherfucker, like that's not fair. I'm
Good
gonna
luck.
lose.
Right.
I I have no shot now, but he's a really good guy. But it's interesting to see from a horror author's perspective. I mean, obviously he's been at it for a long time too, and he's
Yeah.
definitely had success. But in the last 5 years, this guy is just blown up completely. Like it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
he couldn't go on book tour to Germany because of COVID. I'm like, you were going to go on book tour in Germany because they want to pay him to do that. I'm like, that's it's just hard to wrap your head around that. And and especially and then you realize how big the horror genre really, how popular it is. But there's also a lot of titles. So
Yes.
it's very competitive. How are you? Are you as you write more and more novels? I mean, with 20 out there, are you approaching things differently in when it comes to like launches and PR and marketing? Do you have your own PR company that helps out? What, trying different things with each title?
I have for Demon Dagger that's coming out. I have K Publicity helping out there, along with the publicity people at Flame Tree.
Oh, that's right. That's actually how we know each other, right? That's how we got
Yes.
connected, because I'm with Kay as well, right?
Okay. And
And they're great.
then, yeah, I'm very happy with the results. And I've got a very extensive convention schedule that I book into horror and also, believe it or not, into pop culture conventions around the country.
Hmm.
And so I've found that has built a really good fan base.
So how does that, tell me how that works? So take whatever con,
Mhm.
you approach them for space
That's
there.
right. Yes. Some cons will call me and say, I had
Yeah.
one call and ask if I wanted to go to it, and I was already scheduled another one. I couldn't do it, but yeah. Then you'll go and you'll purchase table space,
Hmm.
and then the rest of it's up to you. And
Yeah.
you have your display and your inventory, and you take care of selling everything in the whole 9 yards. So
So you're at your table with your
yeah,
pop up behind you and everything,
yeah,
and all your different books, and then people can just come and meet you and buy your
that's
books, have
right.
them signed, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So you're seeing at a lot of these cons, the same people, I assume,
Yes, and
fans.
that's and hardly any ask for refunds, which is a real treat. No,
That's good.
no, they're the the people come back and it's shocking sometimes. I mean, I was in Dallas doing a convention, the first time I had done one in Dallas, and a woman came up to the table and said, "Oh, I read this book," and she points to a specific book, uh, and she gives me plot points from it, like very detailed. Oh, this was a great scene. I remember this.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, where did you get this? She said, I bought it from you at another con. I said, really? What? Which one was it? She said, it was a LA Times Festival of Books.
Hmm.
I'm like, that was 6 years ago. You remembered this book
Wow,
in
that's
that
great.
level of yeah. I mean, I was floored, that it made that much of an impact. And I get lots of really interesting and good feedback from
Yeah.
that, So
I mean, it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, so that's a pretty busy schedule to be doing that. And it's a lot of
yes,
work, and it's probably
yeah,
not cheap. But I'm sure it's worth it. But it sounds like you kind of love to do that. That's like a part that not only is necessary, but like you enjoy that.
yeah. Because I mean, what kind of deal writing is. It's a very solitary experience, and you can be a successful author and have no personal contact with anyone. You
Right.
can
Right.
finish your book, you can send it off, somebody sends it back, you do the copy edits, you send it off, you never actually you cannot meet anybody.
Yeah.
Um, so to be able to meet people that have actually read your stuff and that it affected them or they liked it is the kind of invigorating reinforcement that says, yeah, it is worth sitting there for 4 hours, writing, because it makes a difference to someone. So
And the flip side of that is also you can spend hours sitting there and nobody comes up to you, and it feels like, why am I here? I mean,
yeah,
sometimes I'll go to a signing with other authors, and there'll be lines of people at other tables, and I'm just sitting there, and then you're like,
yeah,
you feel like a loser, and it's hard not to get into that headspace of like, nobody cares, why am I doing this?
right.
The typical writer shit that just like kind of, and you got to learn to move past that, but sometimes in the moment it can be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah. There's the imposter syndrome it's like waiting in the wings,
it
just
never
waiting for
it
that
never goes
little
away.
crack, and then I'm here. Yeah, you're
Right.
nothing.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And the other, and with the imposter syndrome too, it's all those flames are fanned by people who ask you questions like, how's your book doing? And you're like,
Mhm.
well, I've got 8, but you don't want to say that. And, or
Right.
people who just, or everybody just assumes like, you're writing full time and you're this hugely successful author financially. And it's,
But no one is. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, very few people are. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's I was just at Thriller Fest and I've gotten to know I've become really good friends with a lot of people there, and it was great to see them all
I've been
again.
to those. Those are good shows.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I was hanging out with a couple friends and they were just talking about their recent books, which each sold over 1 million copies. And she's like, nah, I really wish it sold two. I'm like,
Yeah.
that, those numbers are like crazy. And so
Yeah.
few people, I mean, it's awesome for them, but it's just like, yep, I'm not there yet, but
Yeah.
but maybe someday again, that whole, the next one. But it's also important, I think, for authors and aspiring writers to realize it's not this. And I went to a really interesting panel about this. It's not just about, keep trying until you have this major breakout. A lot of publishers, are very happy with middlist authors. Middlist authors, bring, keep their company functioning, and that they can lose money. If they give you a media advance and it doesn't earn out, that's not the end of the world. That's okay, because they can still be profitable even if you don't earn out your advance, because of how their P&Ls work. So it was nice to hear that, and it's a career and it's a journey, and you're not, there are people who are overnight success, but it's very few. But there are a lot of people like yourself who have just like learned, love to write, love to storytell, but have also learned the business of it and just kind of keep chipping away.
Yep.
Do you feel, I mean, at this stage in your writing career, and now that you're able to dedicate more time to it, have things shifted? Have you, you said you're producing more, but I'm always curious to see if people are looking for new ways to do things. The whole, because after a while, book comes out and it's great, but sometimes you're like, I want to try something different and see what happens when I do that.
Because I've had more writing time available, I'm writing faster than a publisher wants to publish it. They don't want to publish 3 books by you a year. They got other people to do. And I was thinking about trying a self-publishing route just to see how that one works. Because there is a fan base out there, and I do have, folk. I can move the books at cons definitely. And I'm thinking about doing that, but you start running the numbers and you want it, you can't just slap it out there. You got to pay for a good cover and pay for a good editor. And, if you want to do it right, you're going to pay for all the things that a publisher pays for every day. So,
yeah, for sure. And and Stephen King did this once as well. And granted, we're not on that level, but the idea of having a built-in fan base, and then he just did like an ebook. It's only available ebook, and I thought that's really interesting. You still got to do cover art and stuff like. What's that?
He was way ahead of the curve.
He was way ahead of the curve.
Next to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that is an interesting thought, especially if it's a book that you like that maybe no one's picked up, and you're like, I can just make this a digital download and just see, if I sell 5,000 copies of this, that's great money, So yeah, but yeah, I'd be curious about that stuff too. Or even like, maybe I want to write something different, maybe under a different name, or, but it is a matter of how much time do I have to explore.
I did write something different under a different name, sort of. And that is one thing that I did self-publish. So I wrote a novel of the life of John the Baptist.
Oh.
And which is not anything my average horror reader is going to go for. But I had an inspiration for that story, and I wrote that, and I paid for the cover and I paid for the editors and all, I got it all done right. And all of that, all the royalties for that get donated to the Franciscan Foundation for the Holy Land that does education and college scholarships and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
For kids in the Middle East. That generated money for them. And
that's awesome.
That was an interesting experiment, and it was a good place for that story to go do something good. So.
And there's a little bit of horror. You got a whole decapitation going on there.
Oh, I did have a mass crucifixion scene of rebels against the Romans. So, you got to sneak something in.
That was not a docile group of individuals back then.
Right. They were they were not very benevolent.
All right, Russell, we're going to do a quick storytelling and then we're going to wrap up. So I've got
Okay.
3 books that I kind of chose from random off my shelf. So I'm going to have you pick one of them, and then we'll pick a random page and a random sentence and just kind of exchange some sentences back and forth and see if it gets real dark and horrifying.
Okay.
I've got The Spy at Twilight by Brian Forbes. Oh, I've got an anthology that I'm in, actually, Blood and Gasoline. So it's a very high octane short story anthology. And then Stephen Hall's The Raw Shark Texts, which is a very bizarre book, which I remember loving. So pick one of those.
Let's take that last bizarre one and see.
Okay. And give me a page between 1 and 400.
114.
And a sentence between 1 and 10.
1.
It's actually 4 sentences, but it's all very brief. And I think it lends itself well to maybe where we want to go. So I'm going to read this and then just give me a couple sentences, whatever you feel comfortable with, and I'll do a couple sentences, and then I'll call it quits in a couple minutes. Thump, thump, my heart. All I could hear as I stared at the last book's cover.
I shouldn't have even been in the library at this time of night. And I shouldn't have been looking through these books. But finding this grimoire in the stacks made it worth the risk.
I couldn't believe what I was looking at. She died 15 years ago. I was there when it happened. And yet, here's her face on the cover of this book. She'd aged from when I last remembered, but she couldn't still be alive.
I checked the dust jacket and the details matched, even though the name was different. Was this publisher going to be a way I would find her? I checked at the front to see where the book was from, and it was a major publisher. So maybe it was her.
The thumping of my heart continued until I looked at the copyright, and that's when it seemed to stop altogether. This book is 40 years old. How can that be possible?
I took the dust jacket off, folded it up, and stuffed it in my pocket. This was the clue I needed. This was going to start my quest. I hoped it would be successful.
I left the library. It was well past midnight at this point. I don't even know why the library was still open, to be honest.
It wasn't. We snuck in.
I got into my car, started the engine, and then just had to look at the cover one more time. I had to see her face just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I pulled it out and unfolded it. And when I did, I noticed she was looking in a different direction this time.
Okay, now you creep me out. Now I can't.
We can call it there. We can end it there.
That's real. That's good. Yeah.
You get a little fantasy element going on there.
Yeah.
That was good. That was fun. I can kind of picture that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely. That's a story there.
Well, I'm excited for your upcoming book, and it's coming out in August.
That is correct. Demon Dagger from Flame Tree Press, coming out in the middle of August. Hardcover, paperback, ebook.
That's fantastic.
Every publisher everywhere. Every bookseller everywhere. Go grab one.
Awesome. Russell, what a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your journey. It's been fantastic, and it's great to see somebody who has just kind of really committed their life to writing, and now really full time, which is fantastic. And I think that's very inspiring, and it was my honor to get a chance to spend some time with you today.
Thank you. Enjoy listening to your podcast, and it's a treat to be on it.
Thanks, Russell. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
That was my conversation with Russell James. Interesting guy, right? I really enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you did as well. If you want to find out more about Russell, you can go to his website, which is russellrjames.com. And you can see where he's going to have appearances for his convention and signings. And if you want to find out more about me or find out where I'm going to be appearing, please just go to carterwilson.com or subscribe to my newsletter, because that would be cool. That is it for now. Hey, thanks so much, as always, for listening and or watching this. We've got some great episodes coming up soon. In the meantime, take care.